Hello everyone, my name is Stonesy Boy, and it's great to be here today. It's exactly, I believe, not 3 hours, but at least 30 minutes since I was done recording the FNAF, and I am still terribly sorry about that. But I still edited it to where it's only 31 minutes, so that's good, right? Right. Okay. Today, we are reading Lonely Freddy. We're reading to page something. Page 100. Where's page 100? This is going to be a very quick read, and hopefully the world record for this channel. But multiply by 0. Oh, sorry. I'm thinking of PewDiePie. Bad. Ali. Oh, cool. Bad. Alec always argued. Was such a subjective word, but it's the very definition. It was determined by someone else's baseline. It was a word that served one purpose, to judge, and Alec had been judged his entire life. His first memory was a decidedly terrible one. He was a preschooler and bigger than the other kids. Recognizing this advantage at an early age, he found he could move to any front of any line with surprising ease. The other kids were glad to play games he dictated, and he never had to look for a seat at the lunch table. It was only when the preschool teacher pulled him to the side on the first Memorial Day that Alec was made to understand that he was bad. "You're a boy," the teacher had said to him, a word he assumed was positive, and smiled when she offered it. Instead of putting him on the shoulder like his mom would do when he ate his whole meal, the teacher shrank away from him in horror. In fact, it was the precise expression from the preschool teacher's face that Alec remembered most of all. More the way the blue plastic chairs in the classroom would stick to the back of the legs in summer times. More than the way a fresh box of unused crayons smelled under his nose. More than the way a canned peaches they served as snacks slid around his tongue amid sticky syrup and a metallic aftertaste. Alec didn't even remember his preschool teacher's name. He simply remembered her look of horror when he didn't understand that he was bad. As he grew older, Alec became to realize that bad was decided by comparison, and that mostly a workable construct for Alec. Until Hazel came along. Hazel, who was named after a beloved grandmother Alec had never met. Hazel, whose fine blonde ringlets were twisted up in stiff bows. Hazel, who slept through the entire night with nary a fuss. Alec was named after no one. It was a compromise between Alexander, his mom, had wanted, and Eric, his dad, had lobbied for. Alec's curls were unruly tamed, with water from the tap and the wooden back brush. Alec's nights were cleaved by nightmares and bouts of loud wakefulness. For the first 5 years of his life, Alec's behavior was more or less in constraint, search of walls separating good from bad. After Hazel was born, Alec jumped the wall and landed in uncharted lands. He was not as easily tracked in this new space. He was bad, sometimes, yes, but more often than not, he was boundless. He went undiscovered. It was the pace that good and bad didn't exist. If there was no one guiding them on the boundaries, if there was no one watching behavior, if anything was an afterthought. Maybe don't single mom as often, Meg, Alec's aunt, Gigi, would say. Kids respond to so much better than positive reinforcement. And Gigi had also suggested to Alec's mom in the same conversation that she switch to organic milk. The added hormones in regular dairy increased aggression in the kids. And according to some studies, Aunt Gigi had no children and no desire for any. Alec's mom was often in the mood for advice, and her older sister was always happy to give it. Gigi, it's not milk, Alex. Gigi, it's not milk, Alec's mom had argued. They drink the same milk. He's not aggressive. He's just, I don't know. He's his own world. He likes the rules. It's like the rules don't apply to him. Well then, you he'll be a leader when he's older. That's great. Aunt Gigi had hoisted. Yeah, Alec's mom said. Maybe. I don't know. I don't know. Doesn't seem like other people much. He's 10, Meg. They hate everyone. Not everyone, his mom argued. Look at Gavin. Who? Becca's son? That kid who's always smiling at everyone? Isn't a bad thing, his mom said. No, it's a creepy thing, Aunt Gigi had said. Trust me. You don't want more little Gavins running around the world. That's the kind of kid you were standing over your bed one night holding a butcher knife. No thanks. It sounds like those that Alec wondered if he'd been born to the wrong sister, and Aunt Gigi was really his mom. But his turned-up nose and blonde hair like hay were dead ringers for his mom, no question. It's also times like these that Alec wished he wasn't so good at eavesdropping. His parents had both warned him about it many times, but inevitably he found himself perched atop of a staircase listening to the conversations no one really tried that hard to hide. It was almost like they wanted him to hear. Eavesdropping is how he found out about the plan. Alec probably should have seen it coming. It was April, after all, the magical miracle month, otherwise known as the month for precious Hazel was born. Alec got a day, the 18th day of August to be precise. That was his special day when his parents pretended he wasn't a problem. But Hazel got a full 30 days of adoration. Someone's got a special day coming up in 2 weeks. Someone's got a special day coming up in 2 weeks, his dad would say. Are you excited for your party? His mom would ask, and Hazel's eyes would glitter. She'd act up like it's all too much fuss. His parents would eat it up. She'd earned it, they would say. She should enjoy it. Then they looked at Alec and wait for him to agree, which he rarely did. Why bother? It's not like it would change a thing. She'd still get the party. Maybe it would have been decent of him to be nice to Hazel once in a while, but Alex just couldn't see giving his parents the satisfaction. So when he overheard his parents discussing the plan, he was frankly surprised it had taken them this long to come up with it. They must have been behind on their reading. It's in chapter 5. It's in chapter 5. Have you gotten to chapter 5 yet? Alec's mom asked his dad across the kitchen table. They stirred their decaf coffee that night. I thought chapter 5 talked about letting the child choose their own road, his dad said, a tone of expression in his voice becoming more than a regular thing. No, that's from the glowing child, corrected his mom. I'm talking about the planner. His doctor says the glowing child theories are all wrong. Alec remembered the glowing child method well. Apparently the author believed every child was simply a blob of clay waiting to be self-molded, which was completely bonkers. Exercising like letting Alex rename himself, so he decided on Captain Thunderpants and spent the entire week farting himself around the house and claiming he couldn't help it. It was his namesake. That wasn't as ridiculous as the day they read that they needed to plant a garden with him, so he would nurture something. For the time they were told to go camping as a family, they can get back to their familial core. The garden experiment ended in Alec burying his mom's wedding ring in the soil to see if it'll grow more diamonds. The camping trip devolved into a sort of Lord of the Flies situation after Hazel got a mosquito stuck up her nose, and Alec may or may not have convinced her that it would lay eggs in her nasal passage. The trip really didn't have a chance of after that. Honestly, Meg, if the more we read, the more I'm convinced that no one else so-called doctors know what the heck they're talking about, his dad said, but Alex's mom was not deterred. Well, Ian, what's the alternative? Do we give up? It wasn't the first time Alec had heard of the conversation like this one. It seemed to happen in the spaces between every other book of his parents to read to try to understand their son, just so different than them. It wasn't the first time Alec had heard this sort of conversation, and yet it would form the same hard stone in his stomach every single time, because no matter how many books they read or gardens they made for him to plant, or organic milk they poured down his throat, the one thing they never tried was talking to him. Of course we don't give up, his dad said to his mom, whipping a little teaspoon around the size of his coffee mug until Alec imagined it forming a little decaf whirlpool against the ceramic. Just ask me. Just ask me. Just ask me, Alec whispered for just a second. For once in all 15 of his 15 years, his parents were both silent, and he thought maybe they'd hear him. Just ask me what's the matter. If they asked, he might have said, I'm not like you, and I'm not like Hazel, and that should be okay, but his parents simply went on talking. Can't we just skip ahead to the part where you tell me what we're supposed to be doing? His dad said. Just read the chapter, Ian. The party's next weekend, and I really think we need to lay some groundwork before Saturday. His dad sighed so heavily, I could hear it from the stairs, which is how he knew that his dad would again read the useless book on some useless method for helping him understand the enigma of a child. It was the same every time, and because his parents always stashed their collection of parenting books on some super secret location Alec had never been able to discover, he'd be starting some disadvantage, like always, watching the plan and Chapter 5's contents unfold over the course of the next week. Upstairs in the Jack and Jill bathroom that separated Alec's room from Hazel, he started from the mirror and tried to see himself the way his parents did. They saw the same blonde hair, the light green eyes. Same blonde hair and glowing green eyes. Yeah, you get a point in my book if you understand that joke. The same jaw set in rigid determination to ever hang open in amazement, to never break into the unexpected smile. Alec was nothing if not deliberate. It was only Hazel who occasionally took him by surprise. Are you okay, Buster Wolf? She asked from her doorway, and she fixed his face after breaking it in half. I'm joking, in annoyance. But he was a little too late in doing so, and she was afraid she'd see him startled. Why wouldn't I be? He asked, leveling her with the same type of question he always asked. He had mastered the art of deflection. Hazel shrugged and grabbed her toothbrush, being nonchalant too. But she wasn't nearly as good as he was. Mom and Dad were acting weird again, she said, shorthand for the explanation. She meant Mom and Dad are picking on you again. But Alec wasn't so easily fooled. His sister was the worst of them. She conned everyone else with her questions that pretended to be innocent, and her smile that might have made anyone else think she meant it. Don't worry, he said. It won't affect your party. He meant for it to be slight on her, but she misunderstood, and she thought he actually cared. I don't really care about the party, you know, she said, looking at the reflection in the mirror instead of looking directly at him. And that's how he knew she was lying. She started to brush her teeth, and Alec took a moment to study her as she looked down into the sink of spit. It's almost like she was able to will every part of herself to be perfect. Her hair never fizzed, her nose never ran, her freckles were evenly spaced, as though they'd been painted on steady hand. Even her teeth were straight. She'd probably never need braces. Howard had started to believe she'd never get his braces off. "Don't be dumb," he finally said. "Of course you are. You care about your stupid party." Her face flushed a perfectly even shade of pink. "I bet not, if many people will even come," she said. Ella couldn't even muster a response for that ridiculous plea for fake sympathy, as he just snorted. Yeah, okay, he said, and left her to finish swishing the toothpaste from her mouth. The day of getting his own bathroom in his own house, with his own rules, and no one to wonder why he was different from them, that day couldn't come soon enough. Stars had begun to dot the sky when Alex's trance was broken by a creak in the bathroom door on Hazel's side. He waited for the interruption to pass, but the longer he waited, the more it became clear that Hazel wasn't in there to go to the bathroom. After a few seconds, the door to his room in the bathroom opened a crack and spilled the blonde curls of his sister as she broke a cardinal rule. "Get out," he said, and she snatched her head back into the bathroom, startled. But that didn't last. Instead, she opened the door a little wider, and to Alex's utter relief, she dared to step inside his room. He watched her look around for a second, as though she'd entered a strange new world. In a way, she had. He'd never suspect that she snuck in here when she wasn't around. That question was answered by the way he stared around her now. She was a rule follower, even when no one was looking. Do you have a death wish?" he said, and he could hear her swallow. Still, she took another step toward him. He had a couple of options. The usual verbal intimidation wasn't working, so he can use brute force. Pain was an excellent motivator. He could play at charging at her, whip the covers off and himself, and lunge out of the bed just far enough to chase her off. Or he could exercise the philosophical trickery. You could lie there, perfectly still, saying not even a single word more. He could watch her as closely as watching her now. Wait for her to get close to achieve whatever insane goal she must have for coming in here, defying all logic, and watching her courage falter deeper as she ventured into his room. Maybe it was a thrill of exerting that level of control over the situation, or maybe he was curious to see what she'd do. Either way, he opted for the third option, and he waited. Strangely, for as closely as he studied her, Hazel studied him just as closely back. She took another step toward the bed, then another. Though he could tell she was trembling, could see from a second that she popped her head in. She continued to walk forward. It wasn't until she was just a couple steps from the bed when he noticed she was holding something. She took the last two steps fast, though as her courage were expiring, and set the thing at the foot of Alex's bed. Then she took 2 steps backward, spinning her heel, and sprinted back into the bathroom, pulling the door to the bedroom closed behind her. Alex stared at the book at the foot of his bed for a long time before he finally picked it up. It was green, in a bold white lettering. The title, Presley Center, lazily laid from the jacket. It was flagged with a bright pink sticky note right at the start of Chapter 5. When he opened it, written in fine pencil script of his mother's camphor hand, were notes of for his dad and her to follow in the days leading up to Golden Hazel's party. "Oh, so your little sister stole something for you. That's nice." Defying their parents, defying all logic, rules, and self-instance, Hazel had stolen the planner from their parents' secret library while they slept, and she had shared it with him. Alex's heart raced as he read through the carefully prescribed steps of Chapter 5. The method that promised to turn their bad child good and achieve the familiar harmony his parents had read over and over was achievable. And then he was done thumbing through the pages his father hadn't yet bothered to read, but agreed to try out their problematic firstborn. Alex stared at the closed bathroom door his sister had gathered the courage to open, knowing the wrath she'd surely incur. He wondered for the rest of the night about why she had done it. That sort of game she was playing at. What kind of sorcery she practicing, trying to lull him into a false sense of camaraderie. When he allowed his memory to fall backward, he retraced the times he had confused her in the past, the moments he'd simply assumed she was just attempting to throw him off. Off his game. There was the time she baked him cookies in her toy oven after his parents had ignored the pleas for sweets at the grocery store. There was the one moment during the doomed camping trip where she laughed at an unintentional joke he made, even as she clawed desperately at her nose for the rogue mosquito. There was that one Mother's Day when she'd added his name to the card because he'd forgotten. Alex stared out of the window for the rest of the night until the dotted stars gave way at the blue dawn before sunrise. It was too tempting to believe that his sister had brought him the book because an alliance had suddenly seemed like a good idea. 10 years of watching the uncanny spells she cast on his parents, and the rest of the world had taught him she wasn't so easily trusted. No, he thought as night crept into day, this is just another trick. She had been able to fool everyone else, but him up to his point. A phony peace offering wasn't about to trick him into thinking she was suddenly on his side. Still, it unsettled him a little that he didn't know that exactly she was up to. There was only one way to really solve that mystery. I'll play along, he whispered to himself. She'll show her cards eventually. You're making it too complicated, Hazel said. Seemed she was taking a new alliance with surprising comfort. They were sitting by the pool in the backyard, their feet dangling in the chlorinated water. The sun beat against their backs. Alec didn't need a mirror to know his neck was starting to glow pink. What are you talking about? It's a perfect plan, he said. Alec was in such a habit of coldly dismissing his sister, it was especially difficult to pretend to take her seriously. But if he was going to discover whatever trap it was she was trying to lure him into, he had also had to be convincing. Strangely, though, in pretending to take her advice, he was starting to see her differently. It's weird the way this person he was so closely related to suddenly becoming a whole in front of him. Like he'd been living with a hologram this whole time. She was completely formed con artist. So let me get this straight, she said, rolling her eyes skyward. Your big plan to get Mom and Dad to stop thinking you're a total sociopath is to start like a total sociopath? After reading Chapter 5 the night before, Alec learned that the plan was grossly simplistic. Take on the teenage brain. If parents wanted a well-behaved, predictable child, they simply needed to treat him like the opposite of that. It was sort of the hokey reverse physiology, and nothing irked Alec more than having his intelligence insulted. So his counterplan was simple. He was just going to ask worse. Way, way worse. He was pretending, of course. He knew his counterplan was a terrible one, but he needed Hazel to be the one to come up with the idea, not him. It was the only way to make her believe that falling for her gesture was the sibling love. Once her guard was down, he'd able to figure out what she was actually up to. How am I a sociopath in this scenario? He asked, trying hard not to actually feel offended. It's just an act. He reminded himself. Just an act. They think the best way to make the good is treat me like I'm bad, Alec added mock entourage. If you ask me, that's pretty sociopathic. That is the end for today's video. I know there was no middle breaking down, but this is only 16 pages today. And yes, we are on page 101 of this, how many page book? 250. So, hindsight, if 250 is the max, we are, what is that? 50, 100, 150, 200. We're a fifth of the way there, or 2 out of 10. So, that's good, right? Right. So, hope you guys have a super fantastic, wonderful day. Be polite, be efficient. Don't die to the coronavirus. Skibidi beep biddy bop. No, it's bop 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 whatever. And this is the record for the shortest video. I'm just gonna say 26 minutes. Hope you guys have a super fantastic, wonderful day. Don't die to coronavirus. Da 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 ba da ba.